More flips should be coming for the Auburn Tigers.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We're talking recruiting on this Recruiting Thursdays. We're joined by Brian Smith, Auburn recruiting expert over at auburndaily.com. You heard from Josh Aldridge. You spoke with him yesterday. We'll touch on that, and there's plenty of reason to be excited for the future with what he talked about yesterday. And then, we'll talk about Naeem Offord and, potential timeline for him. But, Deuce Knight is the guy that folks are asking about literally every single day, Brian, and there's no new public news anyway, but it still seems imminent. Like a flip to Auburn from Notre Dame does still feel like it's happening.
That's what I get from people that cover Notre Dame. That's what the national people think. Ole Miss thinks they're still in it and might have a chance towards the end, but everybody thinks it'll be Auburn now. So the question is, what day is that? And I would like it to be yesterday.
Sure.
I'm tired of following it, and I'm sure you are too. It's like,
you got to think Auburn wants it to be yesterday. You got to feel like Notre Dame probably wants it to be yesterday. Like we all need to move on, right?
I agree. I don't know what the holdup is, and it's not like he's going to take any phone calls and do interviews at this point. So we're guessing a little bit, but I haven't seen any camp among the three that doesn't think Auburn is the place to go.
Where does Ole Miss fit into this? And I know you went on Locked On Ole Miss and talked about it, but do you think this is just did they host him for like a Hail Mary type visit? Or do you think that they legitimately made a push here?
They've had him multiple times. There's more than it's public. They are definitely in it long-term. Just telling this is going to be a long-term recruitment, regardless of who he does or doesn't commit too soon. I know nobody wants to hear that, especially me. Hey, it is what it is. This is what I signed up for. But this is a kid that fits their offense. He's an in-state kid, and it's just, for whatever reason, the certain head coach at Ole Miss is not a huge Auburn guy. And I think we kind of know that. The fan bases don't like each other much.
Sure.
So,
right. Yeah.
I don't know what that's all about. I've never, I came in too late to that game, but Kiffin is going to recruit him until he dies. So that'll be a battle through signing day, whether or not Notre Dame bows out. And I still think they will eventually. I don't think they'll play the game long-term. Maybe I'm wrong. I think it'll end up being Ole Miss or Auburn on signing day.
Yeah. I'm a little surprised Notre Dame hasn't pivoted already and kind of, about faced and looked at another quarterback, unless they're doing things behind the scenes, which would make sense. They could totally be doing that and we don't know, they're calling quarterbacks, but I'm a little surprised that they've let it happen. Cause Notre Dame's a proud program. And for the most part, I think that's a positive thing where they say, hey, if you're committed to us, you can't visit anywhere else. And they've kind of let this happen. I'm a little surprised of how they've handled it. If I'm being honest, Brian.
I am too. I've covered every school in some way, shape, or form. The only school that is more picky about it's Clemson, and they're so far out there. There's nobody even close to you can't take an unofficial visit that they find out about, at least. Dabo will pull it.
Yeah.
So Notre Dame, it's with their official visits, but they still really chastise on unofficials too, for the most part, I think. Yeah. But this is such a public mess. I'm not sure what you do. And they got an elite kid last year, so it's not like they're holding nothing. But for whatever reason, at least for now, that's what they're doing. I've gotten different answers from multiple people around the Notre Dame program. So, that's media people. It's not none of the Notre Dame coaches, but I just find it surprising. I'm with you. I thought they would have, and I still think if he commits to Auburn, I think they'll be done. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my opinion.
That's the feeling I get too, just from kind of reading in between the lines and picking up on context. But we'll see. We'll see. I think he flips to Auburn for the start of the season. That's my gut feeling. We've seen everybody else kind of predict that he's going to flip. I don't think it's that crazy of a prediction because he has said that he wants to get all this done by the start of his high school football season.
That would
and
be
if you're
like
doing
the next
that,
couple of days. So
you got to do it soon. Right.
So
right.
High school starts before Auburn plays Alabama A&M. I believe it is 31st. High school, like I could go to a game Friday and enjoy. Like I'm going to a scrimmage here in the state of Alabama on the 16th. High school starts earlier. So if he wants to do it, I assume he's got a game this weekend. Mississippi. So I'd be all for it as long as that's whatever he says is what he wants to do. But I hope it's just one and done. I don't know if it will be.
Brian, what kind of impact does a potential flip, let's assume he does for the sake of this conversation.
Sure.
Does Caleb Cunningham have a different tone conversation with Auburn, or an Andrew Babalola, the 5-star offensive tackle, that it seems like it's down to Auburn, Michigan, and Stanford? I don't know if I'm buying the whole Stanford aspect of it now. It seems like it's Auburn and Michigan, but I mean, does it change those conversations with that level of player? Now it's like, okay, we got our quarterback. Now, come on. Like, we got you somebody.
I would think so, especially for Caleb. I've literally had a conversation about Caleb with Deuce, just talking like, have you seen him, this and that? Like, he thinks extremely high of him. He knows who he is, all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure he's had conversations with him on a visit somewhere.
Yeah.
During their recruitment, because they've been recruited so heavily. You got to at least try. If you flip to Auburn, you got to make that phone call, especially since he's committed to Bama. Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And not many kids want to go to a class as a receiver that doesn't have a quarterback. So that's an advantageous position to be if you're freezing the staff. You need a guy in the boat, man. It does impact quarterback recruitment. Remember last year, once Walker got it, it really helped. They got flips afterwards. It does matter.
Yeah. Having your quarterback in the class does matter. For Auburn fans to say, well, what about the quarterbacks you have on the roster? We're just talking about, you want to recruit a class with a quarterback every year. That's just part of it, because it helps you get those receivers. It helps you get those offensive linemen. It helps bring your class together. And in today's age of the transfer portal, you should get as many talented kids on campus as you possibly can, and then you just see what happens. At that point,
coach told me that before, literally. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah. I think you just get as many folks on campus as possible. So we'll see what happens with Deuce Knight over the next coming weeks. But yeah, I mean, I still think it happens by the end of the month. If it doesn't happen by the end of the month, I do think Auburn fans have the right to panic. I don't think they have the right to panic yet, but I think if September 1st rolls around, you say, okay, is there a quarterback in this class?
If you get to that point, the two parts to it are, number one, where are you with Deuce? There's more information we won't know yet. But number two, if for whatever reason he's not an option, you can't just take a guy to take a guy. That's the thing. If nothing else, I don't know who it is, but go all in on somebody in the next class. And you start, because you can say, look, we didn't even
it probably helps your pitch for the 2026 guy, right?
If you don't go get the guy you want after you don't get a quarterback in the class in front, that's on the coaches.
Yeah.
You're in the SEC. It's not that hard. You got a wide open void. Come on down. So yeah.
It's like your path to being the quarterback here is very clear. It's very clear. We're going to, invest in you, put pieces around you, whatever it may be. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, like I said, I think Deuce Knight flips to Auburn from Notre Dame before the end of the month. Na'eem Offord may not be too far behind him. We'll see. I want to talk about the very talented in-state defensive back in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Brian, can you imagine buying a ticket anywhere other than our friends at Game Time?
It's pretty easy, actually.
Yeah. Game Time is so easy to use. All you have to do is pull out the free Game Time app, and when you make an account, use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. You just type in what you want to see. You can toggle on all the fees baked in, so you actually know what you're paying. How many times have we tried to buy a $20 ticket and you get to actually buying it, it's like $80? It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's not a good deal.
Yeah, I love the honesty of Game Time. So be sure to check them out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Brian, when you look at Na'eem Offord The very talented defensive back, projects to be a corner. I think he could do anything, but he's probably going to be a corner at the college level up in Birmingham. Parker. Some Birmingham people get mad when you say that Birmingham and Parker are similar, but whatever. So the impact, I mean, we talked about the impact that Deuce Knight would have on the offense. I mean, if you get Offord in this class, you flip him from Ohio State. I mean, you talk about sending a national message. On3 put out a graphic on their Instagram. I saw it on Instagram. It's probably other places. But the top defensive back classes of this cycle. And it's Ohio State at 1, and then Auburn was at 2, and I forget the other ones. And it's like, man, if they take Offord, it'd be impossible for you to make an argument that anybody has a better defensive back class than you.
I think so as well. They've got some pretty versatile guys at corner. They've got one of the most athletic guys in the country, and Fagan's a safety, and he could probably play corner.
Yeah.
You add Offord, who's as technically sound as any DB in the class. That is an elite group, and it's Offord's a guy that comes in and plays. He can take somebody's job. He's that good. Yeah, it's the number one DB group. And again, I don't want to take anything away for the other guys. They're all good too, but Offord's technique just puts him on another level. Like, he is so smooth, so natural, and so well coached. I think he's a guy that plays early no matter where he goes.
Yeah, he'd be special. And so he'd be a true freshman next year. And you look at, okay, well, you lose Keontae Scott on the other side. You would keep Kay and Lee at corner. But that other corner spot, it would be fascinating to see that battle. So, like, we'll see who steps up this year. Is it a J.C. Hart or an Antonio Kite at corner? But whoever it is, they're going to have to beat out Jay Crawford, who's a true freshman this year. He'll be either a redshirt freshman or a true sophomore next year. And then Na'eem Offord. And it's like, man, what a great situation Auburn will be in at corner if they pull this. They're in a good situation regardless if they don't pull Offord off. But if they do, I mean, you talk about some of the better tandems and better talent in the SEC at corner, they've got it.
That changes games too. It's one of the critical positions along with D tackle and, of course, quarterback and offensive tackle. So if you do well at corner like Auburn's doing, it's going to benefit you. I mean, I went to the scrimmage last weekend. One of the guys, I forget which kid was out, but it didn't even matter. I didn't even pay attention to which corner was lined up. They could all play.
Yeah.
So Auburn's defense secondary is already good.
And they're all so big. It's not like they're just, it's not like it's just guys who are fast that can stay on you. I mean, it's just physically, there's going to be matchup problems where there's going to be game plans where they want to jam you at the line because they feel like they've got the strength and size advantage, and it's going to throw off the timing of an offense. And that's not even talking about their ability to cover. I mean, we're just talking about pressing at the line. It's going to allow DJ Durkin, Auburn's defensive coordinator, and the rest of this defensive staff to do all sorts of things, both short-term this year and long-term, or I guess the next few seasons with what they've collected, because they can do so many different things.
Versatility. You go up against one SEC team, they use 2 tight ends, play power football. Next team uses 2 tight ends, but they put them in the slot. You got to have DBs that can play in a million different ways. Screen game, tackling, you need big safeties against certain teams. Having these DBs who can play multiple spots, and Offord could play free safety. He's 190 pounds plus already. I've stood next to him. That's a big kid. Yeah. He's going to be able to handle more of the physicality of the SEC earlier than a lot of players would. He's put in time in the weight room, and he's naturally gifted. He'll be over 200 pounds by the time he enrolls somewhere. So I think that's a kid that'll play right away, not just because he's talented, but like he can actually
physically ready. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just with that skill set, it's almost like, man, you could walk him up to the line in the box if you wanted to with that size and that ability. I mean, I think he's a corner, but man, you could do whatever you wanted with him. You
could play in the nickel some or do something like that. Most of the time you don't want freshmen there because they got to play against tight ends and stuff, but
yeah,
they're just playing a natural receiver in the slot. Whatever. He could do that too. Maybe you put Hart there and he plays outside, whatever. But they'll have options. That's bottom line.
Yeah. And I love the speed that Hart has. I mean, you can kind of, that grants versatility in and of itself just because you got the speed to recover if you have a misstep when the ball's in the air. But Brian, when you, I mean, you're hearing the same chatter I am. I mean, there is smoke about Offord being interested in Auburn. Like, that smoke is out there. It hasn't gone away. And I don't know if Ohio State's really done anything to make it go away. Are you buying it, or do you think it's all just like hearsay and hope from Auburn fans?
Well, he's been on campus. Don't follow what people say, follow the visits. It's always the same. and he's been to campus, and Hugh Freeze and his staff have done a good job of recruiting him. I mean, everybody else still recruiting him too, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But he could have taken visits to other places, and he came to the Plains. So they're in it. Where exactly that ends up, I don't know. But let's see if he comes to any of the, for those that haven't paid attention, first 5 games are in Auburn. If he doesn't come to any of those 5, then I'll back off of my statement. That's 5 weeks in a row he could come down. It's only a little over 2 hours from where he lives. So let's see if he makes it down to the Plains.
Does the timing of an Offord flip or a potential Offord flip with this type of player, is this the kind of thing that lasts until signing day, or will Ohio State put pressure on and be like, okay, like, tell us what you're doing because we need to get another corner if that's the case? How does that dynamic work, if you had to guess?
Well, there's 2 parts to that, unfortunately. This is the spot where if you're an elite kid, except for Dabo, who's, again, he does things a little different. That's his.
Understood.
Every other school is kind of at the whim of the 5-star recruit. Jeremiah Smith last year, for a year straight, he was visiting Miami and Florida State and Florida and all these schools, but signed with Ohio State where he was committed. So Ohio State's used to this game. They don't put up with it with some of the other kids, but Jeremiah Smith was number 1 player in the country last year. Offord is in that discussion. I don't know if he's number 1, but he's up there. What are you going to tell him?
Yeah.
Because you're just going to tick him off, and Auburn's 2 hours away. Alabama's maybe an hour away. Like, he'll end up one of the instant. If you're not careful, you're just going to lose it.
Right.
So the player has no lever. It's not even competitive.
Yeah, that's an interesting element for sure. So, yeah, I mean, I think Auburn's in a great spot to really, really flip Na'eem Offord before it's all said and done. The timetable, we don't know. But I do think there's a real chance that happens as well. Man, you talked to Josh Aldridge yesterday. He coaches the edges, wasn't linebacker, coaching linebacker a year ago, but man, he said some really exciting stuff. Let's touch on that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day, and all the everydayers that tune in. Really, really appreciate everything you guys do. So, Brian, you were with the media that got to chat with Josh Aldridge, Coach Aldridge, yesterday, who coaches the edges and defensive ends. And I would assume Amaris Williams was a big part of that conversation.
Well, we all wanted to ask questions about him because we see him at practice. You've been out there with me. That's a very unusual athlete.
Yeah.
He's 260. I even asked Josh afterwards, how much does he weigh? Because Amaris had walked by. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, he looks thin, but he said 260. I said, man, he doesn't look even 240. He goes, I know. He's just so naturally jacked. It's not even funny. And unsolicited, Aldridge has also mentioned, like, somebody said, well, what's his best attribute? No hesitation. And Aldridge said strength. He goes, he's as strong as anybody on the team. And get this, he goes, he just turned 18. And I'm like, holy moly. So, I mean, these are big men walking through this football facility. And he does jack some guys up when they do drills and stuff. We see it, but it's just hard to believe because he played running back, quarterback, linebacker.
Yeah.
He did everything at his high school in North Carolina. They didn't have a way to just put him at one spot. He's playing the strong side end spot. And I asked John, like, he said, we're going to probably leave him there just so his head doesn't spin, give him one thing to talk about. And I'll mention that in a second about Keldrick. But he said he's coming on well and he's going to play a lot for us this year. Mm-hmm. He made no bones about it. He said he's, like exceeded expectations, basically. Super fired up about Amaris. And we all were anyway. But when the coach goes out of his way to give you extra info, what does that tell you? This is going to be a kid that's going to be a big time player.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, he's a kind of a guy that I think the staff felt so good about because they went out and got a lot of defensive linemen in the portal. And we were talking about, like, okay, are they going to get another D end? Like, they got Kieron Crawford from Arkansas State to be, McLeod's backup. But are they going to get a guy to back up Keldrick, or is Philip Bleedy kind of able to do that too? And I think the reason they didn't is because I think they liked where Amaris was with all of this. I think that's a huge part of it. And man, he looks the part. I mean, you talk about like how he's carrying the weight. I don't think there's any question about it.
He looks like an MMA fighter. Like that's the best, like a heavyweight MMA fighter.
Yeah.
And he can move like a running back. those are good combinations. So
Yeah. Well,
I'm
and
just
that's the kind of
curious.
thing where folks are, I guess, skeptical of like what Hugh Freeze is doing because of like the wins and losses last year. Auburn doesn't get guys like Amaris a few seasons ago. Like,
They did not.
I mean, I talk about it with like the receivers a lot, but it's like when Amaris walks by, you point, and you're like, that guy's different. Like those guys, like there's not a lot of guys like that. And same with Keldrick. I mean, there's just not a whole lot of dudes that play like that, that look like that are that type of football player this early in their career.
Yeah, Josh talked about that with Keldrick too. He's like, as a sophomore, he's one of our biggest leaders on the team. He goes, he's so mature. He goes, you just don't find kids like that. And he goes, he's learned so much. And he said last year, what did he start? 7-8 games for us?
Yeah.
That's just the spot we were in. He was just honest, like they weren't where they needed to be personnel wise.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, we had to move him inside some. He goes, he'll play it a little bit this year, but he's a strong side end. And he goes, now he's basically going to be able to play that with Amaris. And he said he's already teaching Amaris stuff and some of the other young guys. And I'm like, that's not normal for a 19-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And he's already taken that role. He's happy with it.
Yeah.
That's going to be his spot. I mean, they might move a D tackle out to strong side end and short yardage or something, but they're good otherwise. Josh made no bones about that. He's very happy to be coaching the edges because of who he's got to work with. He kind of feels blessed, if you will.
Sure. Did he talk about McLeod and Kieran Crawford and what that balance looks like?
They asked quite a few questions about him, and I was surprised. He said he's like our best pass rusher, just his natural pass rusher, no doubt about it, on the team.
Kieran or McLeod?
Kieran. He was like, no doubt about it. I'm like, okay, well, this other guy is going to get paid. He's at least going to go and get drafted next year or whatever. So if the backup, who's, by the way, for people who don't know, he's a hooper growing up in Memphis, only played 1 year of high school football.
Insane.
Josh and them recruited him when they were out in Virginia before they knew him.
Got it.
But they knew he was a long-term guy there, and SEC schools aren't going to take kids like that. Well, it's working out now. They're super stoked. We had a chance to talk to him recently too. He's 253 pounds, and he also looks the part. If that is your backup, you're in a good spot, and he'll be the starter next year, and they'll be good. They finally have that depth where you can rotate guys. That's so valuable. Like, towards the back of the season, guys are going to get banged up. If you don't have depth, especially like last year when Keldrick was playing as a freshman that's rough. So they're going to have more guys make plays. It's just everything. And longer, faster, stronger too, but more guys like that. It's all the above.
Yeah, the timing then. So like McLeod moves on, and then your end and your buck next year would be Kieran and Keldrick still.
Perfect.
With the backup then being either Jamonta Waller or Joe Phillips, guys you recruited. And then after that, it'd be Jamonta and Joe. And then I guess
Morris on the other side. So you're
good. And then like you got JJ Falk in there as well. He'll be developed at that point. It's like, okay, this is what stacking classes
100%
does. It's like this is what building a program the right way looks like. It's not, you don't snap your fingers and it's there, but a few years into it, you're like, wow, we've really nailed this for the last few years, and there's talent everywhere now. So that's certainly exciting. Did he talk about Waller and Phillips at all, the other freshmen?
He talked about both. He was talking about Waller, and I saw him play, ironically, live last year against Deuce. And he's one of those guys, hair on fire, every play kind of guys. Not the tallest kid, but plays with a lot of leverage and just has speed.
Yeah.
He's a kid that I think they'll use in a variety of ways, but right now he's your weak side edge, if you will. And he's learning because he moved around a little bit for his high school, Picayune Memorial in Mississippi. But now that they're going to try to keep guys in one spot, let them grow. He'll be good. And the thing I didn't expect Aldridge to say, he said Joe had grown more than anybody else at the spot since spring, Joe Phillips. He said he hadn't played a lot of football. Okay. He's going to be really, really good. And I had no idea. So I was surprised to hear that because, it takes a while. SEC football is such a jump from the prep level.
Sure.
Good for him. And he doesn't have to be forced into it. They can redshirt him. He's playing well special teams and whatnot this year. So they're locked and loaded at one of the most critical positions on the gridiron. That's a good spot.
Yeah. You can't win games if you can't get after the quarterback, and Auburn is going to be able to do that. That was my big concern all summer, Brian.
It should have been.
That concern is slipping away, which is a good thing.
Yeah. They're in a much better spot than I thought they'd be. Good for them.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. Brian, how can people check out everything that you've got going on?
Auburn Daily and at FB Scout _Florida. I think we're about to have a lot of fun here coming up, buddy. Commitments for one, but I'm hoping that we get some more videos and stuff and Cam and all them. They let us into practice maybe one more time. I'd like to see them throw it around. You never know. Maybe they will.
Yeah, I think we get to go tomorrow. I think we get a window on Friday. So we'll
I haven't even looked ahead. So
yep.
Yeah, anytime I get to see Cam and Perry and them, it's just fun.
What scrimmage are you going to Friday?
I'm actually going to go see Turbo and those guys down at in Montgomery. It's only about 50 minutes from us here in
Carver.
Auburn. Yeah,
Gotcha.
Carver. They got all kinds of players. They got underclassmen and stuff. Auburn's in that race too, so that one's going to be fun. Auburn's going to end up with half their class with flips the way they're going right now, Zach.
I'm okay with that. Yeah, be sure to check out Brian's stuff. Hey, like the video, please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.